right, so welcome to the Crollur and McDole channel. We got a special guest named Richard McDole. Crollur, you got anything you want to talk about today?
I got a couple of topics. One that's on the top of my mind right now. What would you do with $1 million?
What would I do with $1 million? Basically pay off all debt, make sure taxes are taken out, then invest some money, then just not having to work.
For me, this is actually a little bit more of a different topic because like 1 million is me basically being set, but above that, I would invest it into like my passion and my dreams.
What if you lose money in your passion and dreams?
That's why I would have to have more than $1 million. That is because like the 1 million will get me like a house, a nice house, paid for, no loan.
Not a mansion, just a nice house.
A nice house, and like a car that'll last me for a while, and then the ability to hopefully keep up to date with it and pay any like taxes and bills and stuff.
You have an idea what car it is? Your dream car that will last forever?
I don't think there's a car that will last forever.
Yes, there is.
As
long as maintenance and everything is taken care of the car, it should last you forever. Can you name one car that would?
The only thing I can think of is a DeLorean. Stainless steel bodies.
You know what I would say? I say the Toyota Helix. I don't know, Richard, what would you do with $1 million?
Well, first of all, I'd probably get me a couple of accountants. I'd have one accountant checking out the other accountant. Then what I would do is I'd look at what I had to pay in taxes and have that set off to the side. Most of the time, they'll take out your state tax and federal tax, but some places you might have to pay a local tax, be county or city, or depending on where you live at. So you have to kind of watch that so it doesn't come back and bite you in the hind end. The reason I'd have two accountants, one is to do my books, and the other one to make sure that they're not embezzling.
Really?
Yeah.
They do that?
There's been people that's been embezzled. That guy that has Family Feud, what's his name?
Steve Harvey?
Steve Harvey. He was writing checks to his accountant who was supposed to be paying his taxes, and the guy wasn't sending the checks into the IRS net. Instead, he was taking money out of his account and saying he was, whatever Steve Harvey wrote that check for, that's the money that guy would draw out, his accountant would draw out. So you have to kind of watch that. You know, when there's money dealing with big bucks, anything,
people try to second grab it.
Right.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that when you get a lot of money like that, particularly with the lottery, a lot of people come out of the woodworks looking for hand-me-downs too.
Right.
I mean, not only do you have to worry about people that handling your money, embezzling it, but you also have to worry about like your other family members and friends trying to come at you looking for some cash.
Right. Looking for easy street. Yeah, I agree with you on that. You know, but like I said before, after I cash a check, the first thing I would do is I would put it in a private funds, where nobody can touch it, and then have it set up that way.
Do a lot of big banks have that kind of account where you can actually make a special account where you have so much amount of money that you can't touch for a certain amount of years? Yeah,
you can. Well, it's not really like that. It's just that you can have an account set up where, it draws interest in that. And if you take money out of that account, you have to pay a penalty, sort of like a 401k.
Gotcha.
It's usually a 5-year guaranteed interest, or it's a 10-year guaranteed interest.
I'm glad you mentioned that whole 401k thing, because I did wanted to talk about the origins of 401k first starting out when Social Security was failing at the time, right?
No.
It wasn't failing?
No.
But the government borrowed a lot of money on that Social Security. And that's
there's rumors about that.
So let's talk about that. I want to hear what your perspective is on that.
Well, first of all, you got to understand how the 401k came about. And how it came about was during the Depression, the Great Depression that my father lived in. People had vested money into
Social Security.
No, they invested. Social Security wasn't around yet.
Oh.
What they were doing is they were invested in stocks and stuff like that. And then when everything crashed, People lost a lot of money. People committed suicide. And so a lot of people that was born during that time or went through that quit putting money into the stock market.
So when you quit putting money in the stock market?
No, individual people.
Oh, individual. Okay, I thought you were talking about
like me and you. We quit doing that. And so what happened was in the 80s, they came up with this ideal, which was under Ronald Reagan, of having a 401k, and that's what they called it. And what they did was to take that 401k money, invested in the stocks and bonds.
And that's why your 401k builds up a percentage of, like, it works on stock. So
right. Not always.
Not always, but when Social Security came out, when did Social Security come out?
Social Security came out in the 30s. It was under what was it? FDR.
So the way Social Security works is not a percentage; it's what you put into it, and it just saves it up for you, right?
Right. And you got to remember one thing about Social Security,
right,
is what you put into Social Security, your employer has to match that dollar for dollar.
Okay, so let me ask you this one about Social Security. All right. So how come people that get Social Security and never had to put money into it?
No, that doesn't work that way. You have, if you ever called Social Security up or looked on your website and get yourself a sort of like, account. You have an account with Social Security. You can get on the Social Security website, you can sign in, and you can check and see how much money you put in.
No, I'm saying like...
No, listen.
Right.
So once you put that money in, you get retirement points. For the years that you work, you get retirement. Now, what you're probably talking about is people who goes on disability.
Yeah.
Social Security disability, and those people, they don't make as much as somebody who retires, but usually it's for people like your brother's kid, Vincent.
Right.
He's not going to function. But and then there's also abuse with it. But all that comes out of your Social Security funds. A lot of people don't realize that. That comes out of the Social Security fund.
See, Roller, you got anything to say about that one?
Not really. I don't have anything to add on that one. I mean, I was going to mention...
He was pretty in-depth about that one.
I was going to mention that people could abuse it, but you already covered that one.
Right.
Yeah, he was really in-depth about Social Security and stuff. Let's talk about used cars. How the price of used cars went up, but then when you look at new car dealerships, you don't really see vehicles out in the parking lot. Let's see what caused that.
I would say it's probably a lot to do with just a lot of it is probably inflation. Then the fact that companies can charge higher prices just in general with that excuse, but I don't know for sure.
I disagree with you. I think what it is, a lot of used car dealerships are being greedy and hungry, and they know that they can sell these vehicles when people are in need of those vehicles, so they would set the prices higher than what it actually is, because when you go to like a new car dealership, there's nothing there in the parking lot, something that you might not want. So you're forced to go to a used car dealership, and they're like, oh, we got it. We got an SUV that you want, but it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and they sucker people into doing the whole buy here, pay here scam.
I mean, I guess the supply and demand does factor into it. If there's not as many options in the new car market because of the shortages in the industry, that would factor into it.
What do you got for us, Richard?
Well, I say the reason that, first of all, when you trade a car in, you want your car to get a new car, right? They'll take a little bit of money off you're not really getting what your car is worth from turning it in. So if a car dealership can make money off that car, they're going to keep that car. If they can't make the money, or it costs, there's a lot of maintenance problems with it, they sell it to a used cars lot.
Yep, I knew that one.
So what happens is, actually, you think you're getting a good deal and you're not. And another thing is, when you go to a used car dealer, more than likely you can't get a loan of some kind. You got finance problems. So, and I think the reason that you don't see the vehicles on the lots is they're being sold to used car dealers. And if you look at, even in our town, my town I live in, if you look at that one over there by Ace Hardware, there's a dealership there, and they got all kinds of cars.
Yeah, they got like a whole booming selection of cars. No matter what brand it is, they got it. But then when you go to like a Ford, Chrysler, Dodge,
because it's not
empty.
It's not feasible for them to take and put new brakes on, and
they're spending the money
get the money that they want to get out of it. because their mechanics, it's going to cost, are charging a lot more than what the mechanic at a used car dealer. A lot of used car dealers, they do their own work. So that's my opinion.
I mean, along with that, like used car dealerships also have like exclusive access to the banks that they set you up with, and those banks also, they have a higher interest rate because they, as you said, they know that if you're going to used car, you can't afford a new car most likely.
They're gonna
Which means which means you're gonna have a hard time with that getting that loan. So they're gonna charge you a higher interest rate. So it's gonna be more regardless.
So you think a lot of these big car dealerships, they set it up where these used car dealers made more money?
Well, they're gonna want what they want for the car.
Well, I know a lot of car dealerships have a used car lot that they're in partnership with.
Right.
So why is it that when you see like a privately owned used car dealer having more cars than what an actual dealership would have?
They probably made a deal with that dealership to get some of the cars.
Right. Well, and another thing is too that when you go to those used car dealerships, you don't get the history of the vehicle like you do.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
You know, usually you'll get a history of the car when you buy, semi. Not that old of a vehicle, that you'll get like how many oil changes it's had, has it ever had any suspension problems, and usually you get all that information, but when you go to a used car dealer, very rarely they don't have the history of the vehicle.
Well, there's a couple of factors that go into that, and one of them is just the paperwork involved in tracking all that down, but the other thing is a lot of the people turning their cars in. Like if you're getting off a lease, you have to take your car in for oil changes, and they want you to take it into their dealerships. So if it's right off a lease and you're getting off of a new car dealer,
right,
you're going to have all that information. But a used car lot, a lot of people don't keep track of that. If they when and where they did the oil change, so they're bringing it in. That dealership doesn't even have a clue if they even changed the oil in that car.
Well, I agree with you on some of it. And other parts I don't, because the fact of it is, most people who goes and buys a new car, usually about 2 or 3 years later, they're buying another car. And they usually go through their dealership to do their maintenance on their cars. So they got that on their computer. They're not in all cases.
I notice a lot of people
that's kind of why I was going with the lease thing, because usually a lot of people are opting more for leases than actually owning.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was going with
usually that's people who drives a lot of miles, though. They go for the lease, which it makes sense. I mean, if I put a lot of miles on my car, I go with the lease program.
Yeah, but don't the lease, they say you only got so many miles though, right?
Yeah, but there's also there's a charge you get. I know there's a charge you get if you go over that, but I don't think it's enough to really worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a little bit more on your payments at the end of the day.
So let's talk about this. People that do lease, are they the people that once a brand new car, every time the lease is up, then they don't drive as much, or they drive a lot of miles?
From my experience, a lot of the people that are on leases are the people who just don't want to work on their own cars because they just want to get a car, take it in, and then get a new car, and then take it in, let the dealership do it, get a new car, and the lease works out fine for that.
Can I ask you something though? How do these dealerships make money off the leases? What if the person decide they want to buy it after the lease? They charge extra money selling it to them?
Yeah, they charge you what the car is worth. And probably more than what the car is worth, I believe.
I would say.
Because they'll charge you for the lease the entire time, and then they'll charge you what the car is worth at the point of sale then, but it's what they think the car is worth, which is probably a higher estimate than what it's probably worth.
Well, when I bought my car was a lease car. It was leased to a college. When we paid for it, it was 2 years old when we got it. I'm sure I paid more for that car
than what it was actually worth,
right?
MSRP sale.
But because of the low mileage that it had on it, because when I bought it, it only had 20,000 miles on it. But if you look at what I got on it now, and I bought that back in 2016, I only got 60,000 miles on it.
But you barely drive, man, huh?
Right. So, I mean, to me, it came, and I still had the warranty, from the manufacturer when I got it. Still had the manufacturer warranty.
Did you get extended warranty on that too? Or?
Yes, I put an extended warranty on. Because nothing worse than you're paying for a vehicle and you can't drive it.
Oh, man. And the luck is that when the warranty runs out, that's when the parts are going to fail on you.
Yeah. So you see my point on that. I mean, yeah, and and I got a vehicle that was in good shape. I didn't have to worry about it because I had the extended warranty. And and I think a lease is good. Most people that do lease, I agree with what you say, but also a lot of business people lease cars.
I guess
true.
I probably wouldn't have thought of that because I'm not around that many business people typically.
Right.
But that is a good point. A lot of business people probably would lease.
That is true. I didn't think
That's
about
why
that
I brought up, about mine being, that the college had leased it. Yeah.
I didn't think about that one. That was good. That was a good point.
Yeah.
That was a really good point. It started in 1812.
Actually started before that. Actually, what happened was the way the War of 1812 got started was we had American ships that were being pulled over by the British, and they were taking sailors off of the boats and putting them into their navy. By them doing that, that kind of got the Americans kind of riled up. Then you have the nationalists, the Americans who thought that, if we went to war, because we was having Indian troubles also. You probably heard of the Falling Timbers.
Yep.
Heard
that one.
It's located up around Toledo there.
Yeah.
Anyways, we had that. Tecumseh was going around getting things started, and the Brits were supporting them. When they would hit the settlers here, and that kind of, with the problems with the Indians and with what was being done at sea, kind of caused us to go into that war. Since we went into that war, a lot of Americans thought we could annex Canada. And if you notice that, you probably maybe if you read a little bit into it, they talk about how, Americans had invaded, up there to Niagara Falls.
I was like, that is like a highly protected area at this point.
Yeah, and that's why they were shelling us. Because if you look at Niagara Falls, the Canadian side is higher than what the American side was. And they could put cannonballs right into the fort, of the American fort.
That's strategic.
Yeah, I did not hear about that in any kind of school.
But anyway, that's how. And I mean, there was some skirmishes that we had sent troops into Canada, and the Canadians fought us. Actually, the Canadians whipped our ass. They actually had done that. I think the only big battle we ever had that we actually won, the Battle of New Orleans, where Andrew Jackson fought off the Brits there in New Orleans.
So the Brits were working with
But that was actually after the signing of the papers to end the war.
So there was a battle that after the signing of it, when the war was over, there was another battle afterwards.
Was that because they didn't have the communication?
Right.
Okay.
How many times in history have this happened? It happened in Civil War too, hasn't it?
What's that? Where battles?
Where a battle would happen after.
Yeah, I assume there probably is. I don't know of any.
Speaking of wars,
I'm curious as to what your opinion on the war in Ukraine is, and do you think we should be helping Ukraine or not?
Yes, we should help them, but not have any American boots on the ground unless something really massive happened where Russia completely go against all laws in the world, like using nuclear weapons, chemical weapons. Then that is the final point. We cannot withstand it. We got to send troops in.
Well, speaking of nuclear weapons, I do remember that we actually asked Ukraine to get rid of them.
Yeah, that was back in
for protection, and yet we're not protecting them right now.
I wanted to put something out there because that started out with the Clinton administration, I think it was. And when you're promising a country to be part of NATO and you tell them to get rid of all nuclear weapons and one day you'll be part of NATO, but do not go by your word, I think that's messed up.
My opinion is I say that we should support them. We should give them whatever they need to fight the battle. I don't think we should fight it for them. For the fact of it is that if we get drawn into it, where we would end up having to send troops to fight the Russians and that, we're probably looking at World War III.
I know the Polish are all out about, going in there.
Well, you can understand it, because I mean, their country was leveled at one time. During World War II, if you knew anything about history that you read in school, they talked about how the Germans and the Russians had a pact, and they split Poland in half. Afterwards, after they conquered Poland, then that's what drove Germany into war with Russia. They attacked the Russians. Now, as going back to your story about, how we promised that if they got rid of their nuclear weapons and stuff like that, one of the reasons you got to remember why they didn't join NATO, why we didn't let them in NATO, was their government was corrupt before the new president took over. Their government was corrupt.
Who's president at the time in America?
Obama.
Oh, it was Obama. I thought it was Clinton.
Yeah, you got to remember a lot of this stuff led up into 2014, where Russia attacked them again and annexed those two areas. But there was corruption in the government. There was no doubt about it. And, that was one of the reasons why they weren't brought into NATO yet, is because of that.
So before Russia invaded Ukraine, do you think they should have been allowed into NATO before Russia invaded?
I think
they didn't seem like they were corrupted at the time.
Personally, I think that we wouldn't be in a mess if they were in NATO. I do believe that they did deserve the right to, because they did show that they were progressing.
Yeah, they did deserve that they should have been in NATO.
But that's just my personal opinion. But
right.
Other people might have more detailed information on why they weren't brought into NATO.
Let me ask you this one, Crollur. Will Russia actually be 100% succeed in taking over Ukraine?
I don't see it happening. I also think there's a lot more at play here than just them invading Ukraine, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on that just doesn't quite add up. It's like their initial attack just seemed absolutely it confuses me, because his troops didn't even know what they were doing at the time.
Well, because a lot of their generals were sniped.
No. One of the reasons that they had logistic problems, and they were fighting with the tactics of, for example, they it was brought up, I was watching where, they have ground communications with flight, with the jets and that, pinpointing their targets and stuff like that. Russia wasn't doing those kind of things.
No, they're just sending.
They were just trying to, it was sort of like the Germans fought blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like more of a blitzkrieg type of tactic.
Thank you guys for watching the podcast with Crollur and McDole and special guest Richard McDole. Have a good one.
Also, follow us on TikTok.
Follow us on TikTok.